Happy Monday, you guys. It's movie time.
Yep. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, tell you what, we were actually going to do another James Bond movie.
Yeah.
We were going to do Dr. No,
Yeah.
and we actually did watch Dr. No last night. Like, we rented it on Amazon Prime, but we were kind of watching it, and I was like,
Yeah, like it was kind of mediocre.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, I'm not loving it. And then, like, we were scrolling through, I don't remember if it was Amazon Prime or some other streaming service, and I saw this documentary, which I've been wanting to see, like, for years and years, and I was like, ooh, let's do that. And so we watched that, and I was like, well, would you rather talk about that? He's like, yeah, let's talk about that. It's a lot more interesting.
The name of the documentary was Jodorowsky's Dune.
Jodorowsky's
Dune. Jodorowsky was a Chilean guy. He was a bizarre fucking director. Jen's seen all of his movies. She showed
most
me,
of them.
Yeah, and she showed me, I think, two.
I showed you Santa Sangre, which we reviewed a long time ago.
Yeah, it was weird. Real fucking weird. And I think a lot of that was shot in Mexico, wasn't it?
I'm not sure where he shot that, actually.
But the guy's bizarre. He's almost kind of like a Salvador Dali of fucking movies. And he stars in them, too, when he directs them. They're bizarre. So
El Topo was like his big breakout movie.
So he was a huge fan of the book Dune. This is back in the 70s. This is before any of the movies are made. This is before Star Wars. And he started making a script. And then he scouted around. He said it was a spiritual fucking thing for him. He scouted around, got the best dudes he could find from all these different genres. The best fucking cartoonists, the best artists, the best fucking set makers, model makers, whatever. And he was recruiting them one by one, including like Orson Welles, Salvador Dali. All these fucking bizarre people were going to be in this movie. He ended up with a fucking storyboard that was a big fucking book. And there's only 2 of them left in existence, I think he said, right? 2?
I think they initially printed 20 of them, which we'll get into in a minute. Yeah. But they there's not that many of them still floating around. I think they auctioned one off at Christie's for like millions and millions of dollars because there's not many of them left.
And he mostly gave them to the studio heads in the studios. And they turned him down. But they have guys in this documentary that have read the storyboard, and it's thick, man. It looks like it's 500-600 pages of illustrations with the captions, you know what I mean, what the people are saying and everything. And the guy says, you can't see the movie, but I saw it. I read it. I saw the whole thing because it was fucking awesome.
Because it's all storyboarded.
It's all storyboarded. And as the documentary goes on, I'm recognizing all the work. I'm like, oh man, a lot of the design for the spaceships was coming from a British guy named Chris Foss, who was real fucking famous in the United States for making spaceship paintings. And my mom would buy big compilations of his work at B. Dalton Bookstore and give it to me when I was a kid. And I didn't know a lot of that stuff was going to be used in Dune, or they were planning to use it in Dune. And the Harkonnens were all going to be designed by Giger.
Yeah.
He was going to do all the Harkonnens. Anyway, the movie never came through. But the teams that he assembled ended up doing shit like Alien, Blade Runner. So a lot of movies sprang from this, including like some of the costume designs ended up in...
like Flash Gordon.
Like Dune. Like because, what was his name? Dino De Laurentiis kind of started ripping stuff off. Some of it ended up in Star Wars.
Yeah.
The New Hope. So the movie wasn't wasted. From this, a whole bunch of other shit came. And you can see Chris Foss's work on the spaceships and everything. They were fucking badass. They were very organic, like fish. And they were camouflaged like kind of like tropical fish, and you know what I mean, with the fucking weird patterns like black and yellow and stuff, And it was real brutal too in the storyboards, real brutal. But nobody would make it. They wanted to make it, but they didn't think it would work. We're gonna get into it, and that was my teaser. We're gonna get into it. Right?
Now, the Phantom says some say Dune ripped off Star Wars. Or ripped off of Star Wars?
No, not Dune's much older.
Dune's much older than Star Wars. The book came out in 1965, and actually, pretty much as soon as it came out, because Alejandro Jodorowsky was not the first person that was going to try and adapt it to film. actually, he had to purchase the rights. Well, he didn't purchase it, but his French producer, who was independently wealthy, I found out. He's on the documentary, too. He wanted to do it, so he purchased the rights from another guy, because the guy that wanted to do it before, which was, I think, the same guy that did the Planet of the Apes movies, like the producer of the Planet of the Apes movies, he wanted to do it, but he died, like, before, like, he had a heart attack and he was 51, so at that point, they ended up, like, buying the rights. The weird thing about it is that, I think you said before that Jodorowsky was a fan of Dune. According to him, he's kind of crazy, but, like, in a fun way.
I like him.
He seemed like he's very enthusiastic, which I love.
I like him. I like his energy.
Yeah, he's very, very energetic. And the weird thing about it, we watched this documentary. This documentary was made in 2013. And he's in it, and his son's in it. And in the documentary, he's 84.
You wouldn't know by looking at him.
And you wouldn't know because he's like super excited and he's like super everything like that. And we were watching it being like, is he still alive? He can't be still alive. He is.
Bitch, still alive.
He's 95 years old.
Yeah, 95.
He's 95 years old.
So if you want to know how to age, you would have aged like Jodorowsky. Because he didn't age that much.
Dude's kind of a lunatic, but like I said, in sort of a fun way.
But he hunted down all these weird characters, weird people in real life to be characters in this movie. Like Salvador Dali was going to be the emperor of the universe.
Yeah.
Because he wanted the emperor to just be fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
And he's telling all the stories how he got Salvador to work for him. And Salvador says, "Okay, I'll do it. You know, because I'll do it if you make me the most paid actor in Hollywood of all times." And he was going to pay him by the minute. You know, they were going to squirrel shit. He wanted to have a flaming fucking giraffe statue, you know, in the shot with him, and just crazy shit, you know.
Yeah, surrealists, man. Am I right?
Surrealist stuff, yeah. Which they were like, Jodorowsky was like, yeah, the emperor of the known universe would be a surrealist. He'd be fucking bizarre.
Well, that's what. Well, okay. So Jodorowsky, his whole vision for this, like you said he was a fan of the book. He said that he didn't read the book. Actually, he said various things over time because he's a very larger than life character.
You're talking about now, Jodorowsky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he said like some different things like over the time, just, you know what I mean? And he said initially, and I don't think he says this in the documentary, but I saw another interview with him where he said this, which was older. He said that that God told him to adapt Dune, but he hadn't read it. He had a friend that read it and said it was like fucking awesome and he should do something with it. I'm not sure. I mean, I think he had to read it afterward, like, because he wrote a screenplay.
Yeah.
But he changed a lot because, I mean, he didn't change a lot. I think he kind of changed like the beginning and the end and a few things in the middle because he wanted to have his own take on it.
Some of it was better.
But so, I mean, there was some weird shit, and I kind of looked into it. I was watching this other kind of documentary about it. It was like 2 parts where he was talking about the whole process, and he went into a lot more stuff than the documentary did. And he's like, some of the shit that was in the original screen treatment was like super bizarre, and like they didn't even like mention it in the documentary at all. They said the middle part of the movie would have been pretty much just like the book, but he changed a lot of stuff at the beginning and the end, and he would have made it, you know, in accordance with his own tastes. A lot more nudity, a lot more violence.
Yeah.
And he wanted it to, I mean, he's still like this, like on the documentary, like he's talking about, he wanted this to be a movie that would like blow people's minds, like open people's consciousness, like taking LSD without taking LSD.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is in a time before Star Wars had come out.
Yeah, way before.
So it would have, had it come together and gelled and had it been made right, which I'm not sure it would have, but according to the drawings, it was going to be fucking awesome. I don't know if you could execute it like that with the technology.
Yeah, not sure, and the money that they had.
That was, you know, and some of the shit that they were going to do, you know what I mean? Okay, for instance, the opening scene was going to show the universe and all the galaxies. And it was going to fucking pull in onto a single galaxy. And then you would go by nebulas and all kinds of stuff, and it would focus in and home in on a bunch of spice pirates raiding an Imperial spice frigate that looked like a fucking bizarre fish, and they're fighting and trying to steal the spice out of it. Dudes are getting blown into space, and the spice is fucking spilling out of the belly of the thing, going into space like a big fucking blue cloud. And then it was going to go back to the planet Dune, and there was going to be an Imperial wheeled vehicle, like a long, skinny, multi-wheeled trike running across the fucking sand dunes, fighting these pirates, and the bodies of the dead pirates were fucking lashed to the top of it to dishonor them. And how they looked was fucking cool. They looked kind of like samurai with big skull and crossbones on their chest, but it was like a digitized version of it. It was fucking just, it was gonna look really good. Now I don't know if they've been able to execute shots like that. That's the thing.
I mean, we're talking about early 1970s.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, he had this grand vision, like, and he wanted it to be like surreal and psychedelic, kind of like I said, like an LSD trip, but like in movie form.
Yeah.
And all the shit that he came up with, like the guy that storyboarded it, who was that very famous cartoonist, Jean Giraud, I think his name is, or Mobius, they also.
Yeah, I think he was from Argentina, wasn't
he? That guy was French, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so he was very famous, and so he did all the storyboard, like 3,000 drawings, like every single scene, and the shit in there, and he did like a bunch of the drawings for like costume designs and stuff like that too, which was all in this big book that they did. And some of the stuff in there looked really badass, but it's just like that opening shot in particular. In the documentary, they show the storyboards animated. So obviously it's just kind of quick, like black and white pencil drawings, but you kind of get a gist of what it would have looked like. What Jodorowsky said was that he's like, the opening shot from Touch of Evil, the Orson Welles movie, and it's just like this really long, like tracking shot, like across the street and everything like that. He's like, I wanted to do a shot like that, but better, like, and it's like the whole galaxy, like he's gonna do. So it was very ambitious, this movie. And I mean, Jodorowsky, like I said, he's very, very enthusiastic. He's very into this whole spiritual, like, this is gonna be like the greatest movie ever, and it's gonna like blow everyone's minds and bring everyone together and all this. And it's kind of funny, and he's still like that, which I think is that's kind of awesome. And so I'm gonna say, like, I'm not really sure. I'm not going to say I'm glad the movie wasn't made, because it might have been the most awesome fucking thing ever. But had it been made, I think it either would have just completely tanked, like, because they couldn't do it the way they wanted to, or it would have been so awesome that it just changed the course of film history forever, and we might not have had
Star Wars,
for example, Star Wars or Alien.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is that a bunch of the dudes that worked on this later went on, like Dan O'Bannon, he was on this for 2 years, and he, like, all of them went on to, and Giger and all them, they went on to work on Alien, like, a few years later. And the fact that they'd all met each other while they were all working on this probably, kind of facilitated that. So it's crazy to think, even though this movie never got made, it's still really, really influential. Because the thing about it is that the big book that they made with all the storyboards and the costumes and the spaceships and everything like that, it's this massive book like that. Like I said, they printed like 20 of them out. And that was like not standard practice back then to do that. Now they kind of do it more, but back then they didn't. And he sent it to every single major studio in Hollywood, because he's like, this needs a big budget and we don't have it, so we need somebody to back this. And so he sent it there. So he thinks that the team he assembled and the fact that a bunch of studio heads saw this book, it ended up like influencing movies later on. And in the documentary, they show you like a lot, like the opening scene of Contact, for example, the Jodie Foster movie, where it has a scene very similar to what he described for the beginning of this, with like the long shot, like coming out of the galaxy and all that other kind of stuff. And it's kind of similar. And there was one thing in there too where, the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Nazis open the thing and like all the ghosts come out and like go through everybody. That was storyboarded in here too, almost exactly.
Yeah. Also, the way the Terminator saw you, the point of view of the Terminator in Terminator 1, schematics and numbers and data in red, in red. That's the way there was a scene where fighting robots, you got the robot's point of view. Which is that's the first time that was ever done, was in this.
Yeah, as far as anybody knows, that might have been the first time it was done.
And Paul had to train with swordsmanship or how to fight with a knife. And he was fighting against a hovering fucking ball that was shooting stuff and trying to zap him. just like out of Star Wars.
Just like Star Wars.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff was borrowed from it. And if you looked at the costumes, if in Flash Gordon, the Imperial Guards, the guys that look kind of samurai-like, that was lifted from this. That's the way the Spice Pirates looked.
Yeah.
Except they weren't in gold and red. They were actually, the colors were actually cooler. They were like red and white with big black skull, but it was just like it was the outline of a skull, kind of like a digital, real simplified, and brown. You know, it looked a little more. But they did have. There was no use for any kind of camouflage, you know, because it's in the future, and I guess they're using infrared, and there's no way to hide. So the ships had camouflage, but not the dudes. The people all were dressed real brightly, and a lot of the women looked like the women out of Flash Gordon, just real scantily clad, G-strings, pasties, just sheer sleeves and leggings and big ornamental headdresses and stuff. That's the way the women were dressed. And Fade Routher was dressed like that too. So I guess he was kind of trans. I thought they were showing pictures of a girl, but that was actually supposed to be Fade Routher.
Yeah.
The Harkonnens were going to be real bizarre. It was going to be H.R. Giger designs, you know, kind of real black and green and dark green, and you know the way you know, like something out of Alien. It's what they were going to look like. And Baron Vladimir Harkonnen was going to be the fucking, what was his name, Orson Welles. He said he was going to do it.
I love that story.
And they were going to have a big old fat Orson Welles floating around.
I had forgotten how fat Orson
Welles was. Yeah, he was basically nude almost. Yeah. Basically nude. And he had like Japanese paint on his face, like a from Kabuki theater. From what I remember, wasn't it? Didn't he have like he had like a Japanese Kabuki face on, and I think like a female wig, what it looked like.
Something like that.
Like a
kind of reminded me of
geisha.
Divine, actually.
Yeah, like Divine and a big geisha.
I was like, maybe he should have got Divine to do it. Well, the funny thing about it, so he really wanted, because he was a big fan, Jodorowsky was a big fan of Orson Welles, and he's like, I want him to be Baron Harkonnen. And so he's like, how am I gonna, because Jodorowsky, like, he was known, like he'd made El Topo, which was like the first like midnight movie, you know what I mean? Then he made The Holy Mountain, which is one of the most weirdest fucking movies you've ever seen in your life. Please watch it. It's like, it's really something. So he was known like in sort of midnight movie avant-garde kind of circles, I guess. But he wasn't like mainstream famous, you know what I mean? Like Orson Welles was. So, and he didn't have the kind of budgets that Hollywood movies had. So he was like wanting all of these people in his movie, and he's just sitting there going, was like, I don't know how I'm gonna like approach this, you know, it's and stuff. So he was in Paris, he said, and he found out that Orson Welles really liked like this one restaurant. So he's like, so he kept going there until one night, like he saw Orson Welles like eating in there. So he goes up to him and asks him if he'd be in the movie. And Orson Welles at first, I think it was just kind of like, nah, I don't think so.
But he's like, wine.
Yeah, he bought him a big thing of wine, like his favorite one, because he asked like the people that worked at the restaurant, like, what's his favorite one? I'm gonna get him. Okay, send him a bottle of that. Yeah. And then like, so he drinks it. And then he goes over there, and I think Orson was kind of like, meh, at first. But then he's like, tell you what, if you come and do the movie, I will hire the chef from this restaurant to come in on the set and cook for you every single day. And Orson Welles said, absolutely, I will do it.
Yeah. He couldn't separate Welles from that food.
He bribed him with
food and fucking beverage and fucking wine.
I love it.
If you ever see him doing his Paul Masson commercials, you can see it on YouTube. Paul Masson outtakes. He is fucking drunk as a skunk, and he can't get through the shit. And he's going, oh, shit. Yeah. And just take after take. But he could do that. He was Orson motherfucking Welles.
Well, that's probably what he thought, too. He's like, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Whatever the fuck I want. He could be working drunk for somebody else about wine commercials. Sure. And he can't forget the lines. He can't remember the lines. He's just making shit up.
I'm sure like the people that made the commercial like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. That was back when a clip was actual physical film. Yeah. And this shit was expensive.
Yeah.
He didn't give a fuck.
No.
That's your film.
He's like, I'm not paying for it. Yeah. I don't care.
Shit was funny.
Xanada said, Jodorowsky's name sounds Polish. His parents were actually Ukrainian Jews, but they lived in Chile, and that's where he was born. Yeah. And he speaks Spanish like a Chilean.
Yeah.
With what I assume is a Chilean accent. Let me see.
And how he got Dolly was interesting too. Dolly's girlfriend was in this show. Who's I guess a lot younger than he was.
Yeah,
she still looked good.
Like his muse.
Yeah, and she was like warning Jodorowsky, you got to be careful. He will destroy your movie.
Yeah, if you let him on it.
If you let him, he'll just destroy your movie.
But Jodorowsky really wanted him on the movie.
Yeah. He said he wanted the Emperor of the Universe to be bizarre as fuck because you would have to be bizarre if you were the Emperor of the Universe. He just totally disconnected from reality, living in your own damn bubble. That'd have been weird to see fucking Dolly as the Emperor. And he basically let Dolly kind of do what he wanted with the character.
Yeah.
That's weird, man.
But yeah, like Salvador Dali had ideas about what he wanted to do because he's like, well, I'll do it, but only if I can do whatever the fuck I want. But the first thing he asked for, I want to be the highest paid actor ever in the history of film. Yeah. And everybody's like, what do you mean exactly? And so he's like, I want to be paid $100,000 an hour. Yeah. And they were like, we'll get back to you. And so like they kind of went and like
they figured out a way to do it.
They figured out a way to do it. They're like, okay, well, can we like cut him down? We can make a robot that looks like him. Yeah. So he doesn't have to be on the set. So how can we get his shit down to like 1 hour of film? Yeah. Like of filming, and they did that. Yeah. Like so.
And then they were gonna say. And then they would say, like, how long will he actually be in the movie on screen? And they said a couple minutes. They could divide up his thing. Go, that's $100,000 an hour. And he's like, okay, yeah.
He's like, all right, awesome.
He didn't care about the money. He just wanted to be able to say that he was worth $100,000 an hour.
Yeah,
that's all he cared about.
Right, I don't think he cared about the money. He didn't even care about the money.
Yeah.
But he wanted.
He was fucking bizarre.
There was a scene where Amanda Lear was his muse's name. Yeah. She was in the documentary too. And so Dolly also wanted a scene with him and a giraffe that was on fire, because why not? And also, I don't think they mentioned this in the documentary, but I saw it mentioned on another breakdown of this, where he wanted the Emperor's throne to be a gold, like a big, huge gold toilet, but with dolphins on either side. Yeah. And at one point, he wanted there to be a scene in the movie where he would actually use the toilet.
Yeah, he would actually do crap.
Yeah. But he said, but it would have to be a stand-in though, because he didn't want to actually do it. He wanted it. He wanted it done, but he didn't want to. Oh, and there was supposed to be another scene too, not to do with Dolly, but there was supposed to be a scene where I think like all the Harkonnens were supposed to like come in and like as a sign of disrespect to everybody, they were all supposed to. Like the army, they were all supposed to drop trow and shit on the floor, like they were supposed to really shit on the floor. Okay. Because, like I said, remember this is the time of like Salo, 120 Days of Sodom and stuff like that. So all the filmmakers are really trying to like push boundaries. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna do real animal sacrifice, and yeah, we're gonna have real shit eating, and we're gonna have it was all that kind of stuff. So there was a little bit of that going on with some of the ideas that they had for this movie too. Which I'm not sure how well.
Yeah, the whole movie wasn't centered on that. And that shit would never would have been ended up in there. The producers would have cut that shit out. Yeah. They would never have allowed it. The studios. But had it been made correctly, I think it would have been a great success. But like I said, that probably would have cut the balls off of Star Wars. That probably would have never appeared. I think Alien would have, though.
Yeah, probably. Because that was several years later. Because this was supposed to... They were working on this in, like, 1970... I think it was from, like, 1972 to 1974, I think. Yeah. Maybe a little bit earlier.
The weakness in the idea, though, is there'd be no way...
Or maybe it was a little bit later.
No way to get the young audience in there to see this, because it was going to be rated R. And there'd be no way to do the merchandising with the toys.
Right.
See? And that's really what made Star Wars. Selling toys.
Well, yeah.
That's what it did. So there wasn't any way to sell toys off of this. So which means I don't know if it would have had the long-lasting impact, cultural impact that Star Wars did.
Yeah, this would have been, like I said, it would have been, the producers would have got hold of it had it been made. And they would have cut a lot of stuff out. Because like I said, there was a ton of like nudity and, shitting and stuff like that. So and I'm sure none of that would have made it into the final cut. Because, like I said, he wanted a big budget, so he had to go through Hollywood studios, and pretty much they all said no. I mean, obviously, because the movie didn't get made, because they're just like, there's just no way. And they said from the storyboard, now see, there's different estimates of how long this movie would have been. Some have said that with the storyboards the way they were, this movie would have been like 10 to 14 hours long.
Yeah.
And Jodorowsky did not seem to give two shits about that. He's like, as long as it needs to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although I think like later iterations of the script, it was a much more reasonable like 3 hours, which is not that big of a deal.
I don't think it could have been done in one movie. That was the problem with that Lynch had with it.
Yeah.
I think that this would have made a good trilogy, though. You could have made 3, and never, Star Wars would have never appeared, probably.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah. The studios thought that it wouldn't work because it didn't have a ready audience. But I disagree. They would have said the same thing about Star Wars, and Star Wars was a fucking hit. The timing would have been right for a really good sci-fi movie done right. If it was adult, I think that would have been good enough. My dad in '77 was jacked to see Star Wars. He took me as an afterthought. I was just along with the ride. That movie seemed to be like an adult movie when you were a kid in the '70s.
Yeah.
But it was family friendly. There wasn't anything that would, what was family friendly from the '70s point of view. They showed burned up bodies, fucking. Right. You know, but that didn't shock me as a kid. It's like, yeah, they killed him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fucked up.
He choked that dude, yeah. Because we like to be scared.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I sure did.
Like it should be. So I don't think, I don't think the studios were correct about no one would have cared. I think they would have if it was done right. Then they said, well, it's too long. Well, that's more bullshit. The studios would say, well, an audience really doesn't want to be there longer than an hour and a half. That's actually a lie. They always blame the audience for their own fucking grift, really. What it is that they want short movie times so the seat has high turnover. You can show
you can have more showings.
More showings per day. And they want a lot of showings per day. So the end of the week numbers on that film look good versus the competition from the other studios. If it was a 3-hour movie, the numbers would look lower, even though the theaters would have been packed. But it would have looked lower because the other movies fucking were showing 6-7 times a day. So it was more turnover. So they're always gaming numbers and gaming systems. Whenever they said, well, it's too long and the audience doesn't like it, what they really mean is this too long and we don't like it. You know, they want it to be a short, stupid movie where they kind of rip you off, you pay, and then you're satisfied and you go. Just something real dumb. That they'd rather have that. This was a risk to them, you know, and it would have been an expensive movie. And it would have been very artistic. And Hollywood back then, they still aren't really. They don't like any of that. You can't come at Hollywood with anything new. You got to say, well, it's like Raiders of the Ark, Raiders of the Lost Ark mixed with Star Wars, and they'd know what you're talking about. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's called an elevator pitch. You have to give them like one sentence.
Yeah. Right.
And ideally, it's like this movie that was successful crossed with this movie that was also successful.
If you go in and you go, this is a science fiction flick, but it's religious, kind of like the Old Testament, they're going to kick you out.
They're like,
no, too long, too boring. That's what they're going to say.
And this one, like I said, this one would have been way too weird. I mean, even if it was made the way he wanted to make it, they would have had to like take so much stuff out of it. But
I think, okay, what I would have done is I would have been shooting for a trilogy, but the studios probably would never allow a trilogy because they didn't know about, in the time that this came out, they didn't know about sequels. They didn't think sequels existed, I guess. But they learned real quickly about fucking Jaws 2. The shark got killed. They want another Jaws movie. Jaws 2, then 3.
Well, it's dumb because back in the Universal Monster days, they made sequels all the time. They made sequels to every fucking thing.
But they were pretending that everything had to be a standalone.
Well, and okay, so the thing about it too is that you have to think too in the context of the era. Like, yeah, prior to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know, sci-fi had been kind of for kids. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like cheap B-movie type stuff. And then when 2001 came out and blew everybody's fucking mind, and they're like, oh shit, like sci-fi can actually... And that movie pretty much single-handedly showed that science fiction could be for adults also. And so that was 69, right? I think that came out maybe a little bit later. But so, so they were operating under that. But then the early 70s kind of came along, and it seemed like a lot of the movies were going more like realistic, more gritty, kind of. Like Taxi Driver and all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of like, this movie, it's just weird. I'm not really sure how it would have been received. Like I said, I do kind of feel like because he had been successful on the midnight movie circuit with El Topo and Holy Mountain and everything like that, which were weird as fuck. And I think there would have been an audience for this, but I think it would have just maybe been a cult audience. Yeah. I'm not sure that this really would have got a mainstream... I mean, not that that wouldn't be, but I can see why the studios turned it down.
It would have been a financial bomb, probably.
I
think with the technology that they had of the time and what the storyboards were showing and what Chris Foss's work was showing, probably what it would have ended up being like is kind of like David Lynch's Dune had a baby with Flash Gordon, with Dino De Laurentiis's Flash Gordon. It probably been like that,
except on a lot of acid.
Yeah, and then kind of crossbred with maybe like fucking. It probably would have had a cheesy tone to it, probably kind of like Barbarella. You remember Barbarella?
Yeah.
Jane Fonda's movie. Probably been like that, which meant it probably would have sucked. They didn't have the technology to get the kind of shots that they wanted.
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, I'm looking at all of the concept art and all of the storyboards and everything like that. And I'm like, now, if you made that now, you could make that now, like easily. It'd cost like $1 billion probably, but you could make it now. And it would look fucking epic and it would be awesome. But the thing about it was this was early to mid 70s. And Jodorowsky, he has this vision of how he wants it to go. And he's like, well, who's the top guy in sci-fi, like special effects? So he goes to the guy like Trumbull, I think his name is, right? Or Trumbull. Kevin Trumbull, I think his name is. The guy that had done the effects for 2001.
You're right.
And so he goes to see that guy, and he meets him, and he's like, we cannot work together. Because he's like, he's too technical. Yeah. Like, because he's a very, like, a spiritual... He's not worried about technical shit. Like, he said when he made his first movie, he's like, art first, technical second. We figure that out later. You know what I mean? So he's not a technical guy. He wants to spiritually vibe with the person. That he's an artiste. You know what I mean? So he met him, and he's just like, that's not going to work. So then he goes to like some little indie theater and he sees Dark Star, the John Carpenter film. Yeah. Which of course was co-written by Dan O'Bannon, who would later go on to co-write Alien. And he's like, who's the guy that did the special effects for that? Dan O'Bannon. I want that guy. So that's who he went to. And like I said, Dan O'Bannon spent, I think, 2 years like working on this. He was bummed when this was... Yeah. They had to like institutionalize him, I think, because I think he... tried to unalive himself, maybe, or he threatened to, or something like that, because he had put like so much of his, because he moved to Paris. He's like, you come to Paris, sell all your shit, like come here, we're gonna do this. And this was a long process. Everybody came there, they were all working together. This was they only needed $5 million more.
And the idea was not B movie like Dark Star or anything. This was going to be like a high end movie, like between 2001: A Space Odyssey and Star Wars. It's going to be like that. I don't know if they would have been able to execute it, but they had the right team because those dudes later on ended up doing shit like that. Yeah. So it probably would have been pretty good.
Yeah, but and then they got, when they got Dolly involved, and then he knew Giger, so he introduced Giger to Jodorowsky, and he was like, oh, I want Giger to do the Harkonnens. And Giger did a really cool, they showed in the documentary, he wanted the Harkonnens castle thing to look like big, huge Baron Harkonnen that they were living inside.
Yeah, he would fly into the mouth.
And you could fly in through the mouth.
Because it was like ultimate ego. His castle was him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It was cool looking, though. Like, the painting was...
And it had really a road. Cool. You had to get up to the top of it, and the road had a bunch of blades, and he could just pull a switch, and the blades would come out and kill anyone who was out in front of his house, you know, because evidently he did that in Jodorowsky's movie. It was gonna kill a bunch of people on the pathway.
Yeah, like all these little
just kill them all. Yeah,
blades coming out like
that. They were gonna look evil and like something out of Alien, and I guess kind of like floating fat men and transgender, because they both looked transgender. Him, Baron Harkonnen, and Fade, they were kind of in female clothing, but it was kind of sinister looking.
Fade was going to be played by Mick Jagger.
Yeah, he said yes to it.
Yeah, that's who he met him at a party. Well, he wanted Mick Jagger. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and again, he was like, how am I going to meet Mick Jagger? And I was, I'm just, but he's like, I was at a party somewhere, like in Paris or something. And he's just like, and Mick Jagger was there.
Yeah, the thing that worries me about the drawings is that the drawings looked really fucking cool. But if you make those costumes and put them on a person, it would look fucking probably not good.
Yeah, it would look kind of crazy.
Yeah, the drawings were, imagine like a nude Mick Jagger in a G-string. With fucking boots, thigh-high boots that looked really fucking like high heels and wicked looking. And then like armored arms. Didn't he have like metallic wings? Or something?
I can't
something
remember.
Was and then like a headdress. It was kind of wicked looking, but also real kind of effeminate nude. It's just, the drawings looked really good, but if you put Mick Jagger in that, he'd probably end up looking like fucking... Zardos,
I think that coming out, I think that was another thing that was that were kind of like making people nervous about, because they're like, look what happened with Zardos.
Yeah,
which was a very like high concept sci-fi kind of thing that went terribly. Although I like Zardos.
Zardos is a masterpiece. The story is very good.
It's kind of terrible, but it's also kind of awesome.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. The problem with Zardos is the costumes.
Yeah, they do look very silly.
Fucking stupid. What's the guy? Sean Connery, dressed in that fucking costume, is ridiculous. All right, they should have had him dressed in basically just work clothes, like he's been in a welder or something. These are Zardos's professional killers. You know, should have been.
Yeah, why would you go around it like in a red leather
thong
panties
with the fucking boots and shit?
It's like really impractical.
I would have had him in fucking canvas and leather, like something, and dirty, with that Zardos mask on, but it'd been more like a hockey mask. That'd have been look cool. Maybe with goggles in it and machine guns.
You could have costumes, just like I said. It's just
they would have been practical.
Yeah,
they would have been practical costumes.
Well, see, that's what I think.
Zardos's killers, you'd have been practical.
That's what Star Wars got right.
Yeah,
was that everybody wore shit. It wasn't crazy looking. That looked like something that people would actually wear if they were doing what they were doing.
Yeah. When you looked at in Return of the Jedi, in fucking not Return of the Jedi, in Empire Strikes Back, if you looked at the Rebel Alliance's uniforms and like the uniform that Skywalker is wearing on Dagobah, that's basically U.S. Army BDU. The same pockets, the same cut, and I think it might have been about contemporary. But so they were wearing what the U.S. Army was wearing, just different materials. It wasn't camouflaged. It was just solid, like tan and brown, which that's also practical.
Yeah, that's like if you're doing a sci-fi fantasy like Flash Gordon, like the whole point is to have these crazy sets and crazy costumes and shit like that. But if you're doing something kind of more down to earth or grounded like Star Wars, then that's still kind of a fantasy, but it's too distracting, like to have people in these ridiculous outfits that they would never wear in real life.
And Zardos they brought it back down to earth and made it post-apocalyptic.
That would have been great.
It'd have been much better.
Because it's a good story. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's just the costumes are just very distracting.
Yeah.
It's very distracting.
Yeah.
And the whole penis thing. And so there's a lot of things in it that are kind of distracting that they probably could have toned down. So like, because that was such a notorious flop, I think that didn't really help either, because that was... when did that come out? I kind of feel like that came out while they were working on this, maybe.
Another problem with Zardos was the intro of the stupid face and the guy with the painted on mustache.
Well, that didn't.
They shouldn't have said shit. The movie starts with a fucking stone head flying through the air. Going Zardos,
Well, that's
all you need.
That happened a lot.
And fucking explanation.
Bringing it back to Dune, that happened with David Lynch's Dune too. Yeah. Which Because they thought people were dumb, I guess. So they were just like, well, we need to explain all of this. So they have to have the thing at the beginning telling everybody.
Yeah, dumb.
Like,
don't explain shit.
Don't explain shit. Just
go.
Start. People will figure it out. It's fine. People aren't that stupid. Well, some people are stupid. I'm not going to say that, but
the gun is good. The penis is evil, and then it fucking starts spitting all those guns out of its mouth. And
because if that's the first line of your movie, I'm interested.
Yeah, what the hell's going on here? And they go forth and just kill everyone, depopulate the planet. You know, like what the fuck?
Sure.
But then they got dudes in red G-strings and big, high, fucking sexy boots doing it. Yeah. They're supposed to be living in the field, living off a horseback. No, fuck no.
Why would you wear that?
What the fuck? They would have looked like something out of Mad Max.
You're gonna get horrible sunburn. You're gonna get bug bites. You're gonna get. It's just not worth it. It's gonna chafe. I'm just telling you. But yeah. So sorry, I had to answer some stuff. Like from a long time ago, CB said some Star Wars storyboards go for up to $40,000, and if this is rare, it could go for more. One of these, somebody had one, and they sold it at Christie's at auction in 2021, $6 million.
Yeah.
$6 million. Because like I said, there were only 20 of them, and I don't even know where most of them ended up. He sent them to all the different studios.
Jodorowsky could auction his off and probably get 10.
Yeah, because he's got one.
He's got one.
He probably doesn't care.
He don't care, though.
He doesn't really seem to care all that much about money. He's, like I said, he's a very... somebody mentioned that they... High Desert said, I have Jodorowsky's books on psychomagic. They're pretty cool. Yeah, he went very into... He's a very spiritual, mind-expanding consciousness kind of guy. And he started writing books about that like later on.
He changed the end of the book. He said that he said he raped a dude, but he raped it with love. He said he loved the story. He changed the end of it. In the book, the rain falls. If I remember correctly, rain falls, kills all the sandworms, and the only way travel could ever happen is through Paul. He's the Messiah. In this book, as soon as Paul basically defeats the Emperor and is recognized as the His-At's cataract, everyone kind of joins in with his mind as a group consciousness, and Dune turns into a green planet from within, and then the planet moves deeper into the galaxy to enlighten all the other planets physically.
Yeah, at the end of the
spiritual ending. Yeah.
At the end of his movie, Paul Atreides is killed, like physically killed, like he has his throat cut. But it doesn't matter because he's the Messiah and he's basically
he survives death.
Yeah, so everybody like speaks in his voice, saying like I am
Paul too.
I am Paul. We're all him. And so then, and then like the planet becomes like a conscious, like Gaia, I guess. Yeah. And it leaves the galaxy and goes off to spread its message of peace and love.
Well, it leaves this place and goes deeper into the galaxy.
Right, yeah.
Now, that's a crazy idea, but it was used in The Fifth Element. Remember the evil planet?
Yeah.
It was coming to destroy it. It was just
and I think then The Fifth Element, they got the idea from this. This, that's another thing where a lot of movies took shit from this. And Fifth Element was one of them. That was actually when I don't think they mentioned it in the documentary, but I saw it mentioned other places.
Yeah.
Too, that like a lot of movies.
It was the opposite of Dune. It was the opposite of fucking Arrakis. It was an evil planet.
Yeah.
And it got bigger the more you try to attack it.
And another thing he did too, I don't know if this made it into the later iterations of the script, but one weird thing he wanted to do, which is obviously not in the book at all, was that he was going to bookend it with a ship of dog aliens. They were like dog people.
Dog people aliens?
Or dog aliens. I don't know. And so they were going to come to this place, and there was some kind of thing there where there was like a movie that was like the whole history of mankind.
Okay.
And they're watching it. So it's like almost like a frame story.
Weird.
So yeah, he was going to do that. I think that fell out in like later iterations, but I was just kind of like, okay. And I think, and there was also a whole thing, and I'm 99% sure this was not in the book, but Duke Leto, in Jodorowsky's version, was castrated by a bull at some point.
During a bullfighting accident.
During a bullfight, and it happens. And so because of this, like his wife or his consort,
Lady
Jessica, thank you. She can't get pregnant, but she's magic, right? So she takes a drop of his blood and like turns it into semen, I guess, and like puts it up in her cooch, and like so Paul Atreides is like a immaculate conception type of thing, which I thought was kind of a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, but I thought she used technology though to do it. It wasn't technology.
No, it was. Okay. I'm pretty sure
it
was magic. I'm pretty sure it was magic. But I mean, that's what the idea was.
Something that Bene Gesserit could do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Which that's not a bad idea. And I'm trying to think of who else was going to be in this movie. Oh, David Carradine. Yeah, David Carradine, I think, was going to play Duke Leto, right?
Yeah, was it Duke Leto? I thought he might have been Duke Leto. Huh?
He was like one of the first ones that he asked, and he had a funny story where he's like he went to meet with David Carradine, and David Carradine came into his hotel room, and Jodorowsky's like, I had this big thing, like a big bottle of vitamin E. He's like, take it for strength, Yeah. And David Carradine comes in the hotel room and is like, ooh, vitamin E, and just like fucking chugs them all.
Yeah, he said it was $60.
Like, he's like, that was a $60 bottle of vitamin E. Fucking David Carradine, man. He coming in there like taking all your vitamins. Yeah. I just like thought that was so funny. He had like so many great fucking stories about all of the people. And like I said, I don't know if any of them are true or exaggerated or something like that, because he does kind of like exaggerate things, I think. But I think Udo Kier was supposed to be in this too. Yeah. He was supposed to play the Mentat.
Yeah.
He wasn't
Udo Kier was going to be Mentat Piter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I love Udo Kier.
The Harkonnen Mentat. That'd have been fucking good.
But yeah, I mean...
Now, the guys that... they had a real good British guy on there who was doing all the drawings. It wasn't Foss, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he knew how to draw, so the his images could be cast in fiberglass, and that they could actually be produced.
An architectural
He knew how to do it, right. And a lot of the stuff that he drew ended up in the other Dune. Like, the Emperor's Palace, when it comes flying into Arrakis and landing, it's like a spaceship on top of a fucking pyramid. That Foss drew that.
Yeah.
That was originally from Jodorowsky's Dune. He had a drawing of it. And it had loudspeakers and shit in there so he could address the public. It was a cool drawing.
Yeah, like I said, I kind of feel like a lot of this stuff, and they do show you like in the documentary like comparisons of stuff that was used for it later on, either by people who worked on the movie and they were just like recycling their own
or they just saw that book,
or they just saw that book and it kind of got out. Like, I kind of feel like, but yeah, like Alejandro Jodorowsky, he was actually, who was going to play Paul Atreides was his son, Brontis, who at the time was 12 years old. He made that kid train for 2 years.
Yeah.
Every day, 6 hours a day, every day, to become Paul.
Yeah.
Sword fighting, like martial arts, like all this stuff, and he like trained him all that time. And I guess he's not mad about it because he's grown now and he's on the documentary and he seemed like pretty good humored about it, I guess. And he's been like in some of his other movies too. But yeah, he was in El Topo too. Now when he was
Hyde Desert's asking, he wonders if AI could do CGI could do Jodorowsky's Dune. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think really what they need to do is they just need to release his Dune as drawn in those books.
Yeah.
In that big storyboard. It's bigger than a fucking telephone book.
Yeah,
it's that tall.
Massive.
It's massive. And it's full color. It's got full color cover. There's some of the pages are full color to show what that ship, how they
the costumes and stuff like that
on
too,
the screen, and they need to copy that book and let everybody see it. One dude who read it from back to front, from cover to cover, said it was like seeing that movie and it was awesome.
Yeah,
it's like reading a comic book.
And like I said, they did animate some of the storyboard drawings, like in the documentary. They're just black and white, you know what I mean? And they're just kind of just rough drawings, like a storyboard. Yeah, you know what I mean?
So if you see the documentary, you can probably watch it for free.
Well, I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, I think you can watch it for free.
Yeah,
because I think that's what we were on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so what ended up happening with all of this? Like I said, they worked on it for 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever the hell it was, and put all this money into it, put all this time into it, put all this work into it, and then it never got made. They couldn't get the funding. They had some of the funding, but they needed another $5 million, and they couldn't get it. And they couldn't get any Hollywood producers or any studios to back it because they're like, there's just no way. And it just kind of went, and everyone just kind of went their own separate ways, and eventually the rights, lapsed in 1982, and that's when Dino De Laurentiis bought them, and that's when they did the David Lynch version. And the hilarious thing, that was one of the ships,
yeah, that's one of the spice pirate ship under attack, and then the blue spice coming out. That's what it was going to look like. It was supposed to be like a fish-like looking spaceship that could hide against asteroids, but that's what on screen they wanted it to look like. I'll show you some shit.
He wanted everything to look like natural camouflage, like fish or insects, he said. Yeah. He said, I didn't want the spaceships to look like boring gray spaceships, like normal. He's like, he wanted them to be like super colorful. Like I said, it was going to be like a really trippy, like acid head kind of movie, kind of. So like I said, I don't know how well that would have worked out. I don't know. It might have been fucking brilliant. You can't really tell because it never got made.
That's what the ships were going to look like.
But what else was I going to say? There was one other thing I was going to bring up that... Oh, the funny thing about it was that... Okay, so after the rights to the book, lapsed, and Dino De Laurentiis bought them, and then it went into production with David Lynch eventually directing it, and then David Lynch getting kind of disillusioned with the whole thing and getting his name taken off of some versions, because, they wanted him to cram it into less than 2 hours, and you just can't do that because it's just like too complicated a story. But Alejandro Jodorowsky in the documentary, he says he went to the theater and saw it, and he said he was so just the way he says it is fucking hilarious, because he's like, and I went to see it. He's like, I did not want to see it, but I went to see it and all this other kind of stuff. And then he's like, and I watch it, and he's like, and I'm so happy because it's awful. Yeah. It was just like the way he said it was just like so fucking funny. But he was just like so excited because it was bad. And so he was happy that it hadn't been. And I don't know, because you had asked, it's like, oh, if he's still alive, did he see the Denis Villeneuve ones? And I don't know if he's seen them. I did hear him complaining about them like before they came out, because he said, oh, it's just going to be boring, or it's just going to be like just like the book. Whereas he was trying to make a fucking Fantasia of like fucking trippy ass. Yeah. It was gonna be like the book, like in the middle part, but he was adding a bunch of his own stuff too. Oh, I forgot to mention too that he wanted Pink Floyd to do the music. Like he actually went and met with them, and they said that they were gonna do it. And then for the Harkonnens music, he was gonna do another like a weird band, Magma. I'd heard of them.
Yeah, Magma. It was a French band.
Yeah, they were a French band.
That was going to be what the Harkonnens were listening to.
Yeah, because they were kind of like experimental, kind of weird ass music. And it's like, so he was real into kind of getting everybody, like really everybody that was kind of like on the avant-garde at this point.
That was what Salvador Dali was going to look like. That's what he's going to look like as the emperor of the universe. Yeah. Trying to get show some of the characters.
Salvador Dali, man.
Yeah.
I was saying to Tom last night, because we live in Central Florida, I said, just an hour away or something like that, hour and a half, is the Dali Museum. It's in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it's awesome. I haven't been there in a long time, but it's not huge, but they have a lot of his like most famous paintings in there, and like other shit he designed too. It wasn't just paintings. He did chess sets and all kind of different stuff. So I wouldn't mind going again, actually. He was a little crazy. So I was saying last night was Spaniards, man. I don't know, those Spanish artists, I don't know. They're fucking out there. I don't know what it is. But yeah, so I don't know. I was watching it. This is a very, very entertaining documentary. Like all of the stories that he has about, and I think the reason that it's so entertaining, even if you don't give that much of a shit about Dune or anything like that, if you like anything to do with film history, anything to do with art or surrealism or anything like that, then like I said, you don't even have to care about Dune. It's just really entertaining to watch it, and I think most of that is because of Jodorowsky, because he is just such an entertaining person to like watch him talk, because he's just like so, he's just effusive, and he's just kind of constantly, all these great stories. Like I said, maybe they're exaggerated, I don't know, but like he has all this kind of like when he was talking about he wanted Mick Jagger to play Fade, and he's like, how am I going to meet Mick Jagger? And he goes to this party, and he thinks that everything is like divine intervention. Like, he's like, I'm at this party, I see Mick Jagger across the room. Mick Jagger like starts walking toward me. Yeah. And he's like, and the first thing I say to him, I want you in my movie. And he says, yes. Yeah. Like, he just like, it's just like funny fucking stories. He's hysterical.
That's what the Spice Pirates look like. The guys that were stealing spice instead of mining it. I think it's a badass fucking design. It's kind of like a samurai. I don't know if you could execute something like that and have it look like it would be something you would actually wear. You have to age that costume,
Ian says, then De Laurentiis made Flash Gordon. I've always wondered if that incorporated and recycled anything from this project.
Does.
Oh, it does big
a
time.
lot, yeah.
And actually, they bring that up some in the documentary. They show like comparisons of some of the costume drawings and then and some of the sets.
Especially the female costumes.
From this, and then they show like some of the stuff from Flash Gordon, and it is very, very, very similar.
Yeah, I might be able to find some female costumes.
Yeah.
They look like just lifted right out of...
Pretty much, yeah.
Out of the movie.
Well, like I said, a lot of this, and it's not really stealing or recycling because it's like, they didn't make the movie. Yeah. And all these artists put all these work into it, so, if it gets used somewhere, then that's fine.
That was one of the proposed posters for the movie.
Yeah. Like I said, it was supposed to be like super trippy.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I like that idea, but I think also that making it like that would have dated it a lot. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. In a way that perhaps 2001: A Space Odyssey is not dated. It's kind of like what was that? The French animated film we did, Wild Planet.
Wild Planet, yeah.
And you can tell because there was so much of this going on. Particularly in the surrealist movement in art and filmmaking and stuff like that, where everyone's just tripping on acid and, so they made all these crazy, and for back then it was like real transgressive and it was real crazy and like nobody had seen anything like that. But I think if people see it now, they're like, oh, here's those fucking hippies again. You know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't hit the same as it would back at that time. And I was kind of thinking that while I was watching this documentary that, you never know the way it would have come out. But I kind of feel like maybe if you'd made it like too out there and too trippy, I think it would have been like real dated. Maybe.
I think so too.
I mean, that's kind of the impression that I was getting.
Depends on how well it was executed.
Yeah. And in the early 1970s, I don't think they had the technology to do what they wanted to do. Or they maybe they had the technology, but they didn't have the money. I mean, the budget for this was supposed to be $15 million, which was kind of a lot of money back then in the 70s. Like now it's nothing. Like little indie movies are, cost that or more. But back then that was kind of a lot of money. And, they didn't have industrial light and magic or nothing like that. That came later. That came when George Lucas was making Star Wars. So he didn't have anybody to go to, really. There was no big...
Based on what he said, Disney seemed to be interested in it for a while. Because that was very different.
Yeah.
They went with The Black Hole later on, the movie The Black Hole.
Yeah, which we reviewed a very long time ago.
I like the movie, flawed movie, but...
I like it, too.
Yeah, they just... It wasn't quite handled right. But at the time, I liked it as a kid.
Yeah.
I could watch it again, and it's a little bit like a light classic horror movie, like a Universal horror movie.
Yeah,
going to Dracula's castle, basically.
Well, like I said, Disney's dark phase was is really fascinating to me. Like all is like Something Wicked This Way Comes and Watcher in the Woods and Return to Oz and all that kind of weird ass shit they made.
The problem with The Black Hole is there's no way to make a sequel on that.
Yeah.
If you did, it wouldn't quite be the same movie. They did survive it, but the bad guy was dead.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's saying how much George Lucas copied everything.
He ripped off a lot of French stuff, too.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about it is like everybody does that, though. And I mean, nobody anywhere, if you're any kind of artistic person, nobody operates in complete isolation. Everybody is influenced by what they've seen before. And so, it's... As long as you don't rip shit off, like, directly... then I don't really have a problem.
Stuff was going on in animation, like a Heavy Metal magazine, which is a bunch of cartoons, was going on for a long time, and that it was stuff that they would have loved to have had in movies like Dune and Star Wars, and there are just so many little classic. I mean, it was just a long time. These little cartoons that they had in this magazine we used to have called Heavy Metal. A fan sent me a bunch of his old ones, and they were more kind of like Flash Gordon, where in fact there was usually a really highly sexual element to them. They were, I guess, kind of like horny stories, really.
Yeah.
A lot of violence in them. But that's what made them good. They were just very underground. You know, it wasn't kid friendly. It wasn't family friendly. It was teenagers reading it.
Yeah, it was like drugs and smut.
Yeah, you're right.
And gore.
Really, I loved Star Wars when it came out, but the one that I actually was really excited about was Flash Gordon. After I saw it, I wanted to see more. And it's because of the girls.
I really like
that shit. Was fucking hot, man. It had sex and drugs in it.
Mm-hmm.
Princess Aura, and it had BDSM in it.
Mm-hmm.
It hinted that she was sleeping with her father too.
They did kind of imply that, didn't they?
That Ming and Princess Aura were an item sometimes, and he had her tortured and shit because it was just he had her tortured over helping Flash. The problem with Flash Gordon is that you could tell they didn't really know how that movie was supposed to end. They ended it awful quickly, and it was it ended it too easily. You know that?
Yeah.
It looked like he killed the Emperor. Hey, Earth is saved. They had run out of time.
Right.
Already.
Ran out of budget. Let's wrap it up.
Well, no, I'm saying, remember they were on a countdown.
Yeah.
Earth would be destroyed by a certain time.
Yeah.
They killed him just like a second before the Earth would be destroyed. Well, what saved it? Did somebody jump in and goes, oh, Ming's dead, might as well save that planet? It was just, very... it was just real, what do you call it? I forgot the word. It's kind of like automatic pilot happening. You know what I mean? Like just shit automatically happening.
Yeah.
They made that ending up kind of on the spot, evidently. Like, how do we end this thing?
Should have figured that out before you started filming stuff. I'm just saying.
Right, yeah.
Ben says Lynch's Dune cost an absolute fortune and bombed at the box office. That's what kills me is that, years later, they threw all this money at poor David Lynch to make this movie, and it just... I mean, it's still kind of criticized to this day. And so I don't really know why they couldn't have thrown some money at Jodorowsky and gave him a fucking swing at it.
I'd like
back in the old days.
Yeah. I remember when Dune came out. I saw it. I was, in high school when it came out, and I liked it. I could tell that something was missing, and it cut a lot of it out. The producers fucked up that movie, not the director.
Yeah.
There was this thing where they wanted it to constantly be short. Yeah. It can't be that long. You can't cover that story in one movie. They did the best, he did the best he could, but
yeah.
It really should have been 2 movies.
It's too complicated. Well, like I said, and as we've seen with the newer, like, Denis Villeneuve ones, which are amazing, like, you need 2 or 3 movies. It's a complicated story. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can't just cram it into 90 minutes.
And I don't understand the thinking, because Star Wars had 3 movies.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Dino De Laurentiis want 3 movies?
Yeah.
He's like, let's make 3 Dune movies, just like a Star Wars.
Yeah.
And we'll tell it fucking right. He wanted it to be 1 movie. Well, that's just a big flash in the pan. You busted your nut before it's done. Stretch that bitch out to 3 fucking movies and make them good, and people will see them.
Yeah.
But it was kind of I don't want to say it was a bad product. I still liked the movie. The problem was the edit. And there's a lot of voiceover.
If you haven't read the book, it's, like, incomprehensible, pretty much.
Yeah. I read the book, so I knew what it was talking about. So maybe that helped me.
Yeah.
But it's all there. It's just that a lot of it is covered in voiceover.
Right.
To try to fit these pieces together.
Which that's always...
And you can tell that towards the end of the movie, they're running out of time. So they have to speed everything up.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that was a whole movie right there.
Right.
And they just fucking blew through it in 15 minutes.
Okay, we gotta
go.
go.
And Lady Jessica gave birth to Ollie, and Ollie with supernatural powers, and she could. Well, shit, that's a whole story right there. And they just fucking blew that. It was supposed to be. It should have been 2 or 3 movies.
I mean, at least.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, everybody's saying, I don't know if this is true or not, but everyone said that Jodorowsky's original script would have been like a 14-hour movie.
Yeah. Okay.
10 to 14 hours. But that's about right. That's probably about right.
Well, that's you could make that into 3 movies though.
Yeah. That was what I was saying. Yeah, you could do 3 movies.
Maybe 4. Yeah.
Yeah, Xander said it was just incomprehensible to me, but I was also stoned. It's even if you're not stoned, if you haven't read the book, it's incomprehensible. But like I said, not really David Lynch's fault. Either way. It's cool to look at, like it's beautiful to look at, but the story is just too complex to cram into that amount of time, and it's just kind of like they didn't really know how to do it because there's not really a lot you can cut out of it.
So Sophie saw it without reading the book and she understood it. She just also noticed that it just started to speed up as it went.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. Like when I go see a movie that's based on a book that I'm familiar with, it always seems to me like everything in the movie is happening like at lightning speed.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like in the book, it's just kind of like, it's kind of chill. There's no...
Yeah.
There's no limit on you can make a book as long as fucking War and Peace if you want to, or a whole fucking series of like Game of Thrones or some shit. And it's just, but when you're making one movie, everything got to happen like really fast, and that always kind of like bothers me.
Yeah, and I don't know why Dino De Laurentiis wanted it done in one movie. I just think that was dumb. I think that destroyed that product. He could have probably got a good solid trilogy out of it.
Right, and like nobody made it for like years and years, obviously, until recently. And it's like at least, Denis Villeneuve did a good job of it.
And Star Wars showed that fucking trilogies worked.
Yeah.
So, I guess they didn't have faith in it.
No, they didn't. So it's
they were trying to their fucking thinking was probably like, well, this is like an alternate Star Wars. It's our answer to Star Wars. But that's not letting the fucking movie be its own thing.
Yeah.
That's
kind of, like I said,
let the story breathe and let it be its own thing.
Well, the thing about it is, like, the people that are, like, the money men and the studio heads and stuff like, and it's always been like this since the beginning of filmmaking, are not creative. They're not artists. They're not the people that make the movies. They're just the people that fund the movies. And so they just care, is this movie going to make money? And that's all they care about. That's all they've ever cared about.
Bean counters.
Right. So it's just kind of like, so if you come at them with some wild-ass idea that's never been proven and it's not like anything that's been made before, then you're going to have a bad time because they're like, there's no way that's going to make money. Yes, that movie might make it, and it might make all the money. Like, it might be a surprise hit, which happens a lot. But they're not going to risk it.
Well, look at how Hollywood is kind of just ground to a halt. Like, all their bread and butter type shit, which is the average movie that they put out that you never know about, nobody sees those. And then their big fucking, their big tentpole movies, nobody's really seeing those. What are they seeing? Oh, everybody wants to see Furiosa. But that's an auteur movie.
I mean, that's still a real big budget movie.
Yeah, real. But the thing is that that hasn't been tainted by, the bean counters. They're kind of like indie flicks. Because, he's proved that those could make money. Fucking Fury Road was fucking great. But they should all be like that. But the talent isn't there for all of them.
And, I mean, to tell you the truth, it's like they're just going by what made money in the past. That's all they can do. Like I said, that's all. Well, and that's all they know. So they're just kind of, they don't want to risk millions and millions of dollars on some unproven product. So they're always going to go with something that is like, oh, it's like this mixed with this and these two successful things. And they're like, okay, well, here's the money. But see, the thing about it is that there's no predicting what's going to be successful and not. Like, I think a lot of things that, especially in the past few years that have become, like, really successful, like cultural phenomenons, I don't think a lot of people expected that to happen.
Well, the bean counters can't foresee that.
That's what I mean. Nobody can, really. And it's just, it just depends on a lot of factors that aren't in anyone's control. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like the time that it comes out. It's like, who's the actors in it, who's this, that, and the other. There's like all this kind of stuff going on. Like, what's the zeitgeist like at the moment? And some things are going to hit and some things aren't. And there's just really not a lot of way to predict that.
The newer Dunes evidently were hits, and that Gen Z sees them as that's their version of Star Wars. They like those.
Yeah.
You didn't know that?
I didn't hear the first part of what you said because I was reading something.
Oh, okay. I was saying that the new Dune movies are kind of like Gen Z's version of Star Wars. They like those.
Yeah.
They like them.
Because they're awesome.
Yeah.
I really liked what he did with it. It is very close to the book, but, you know, it's not wild like this version would have been.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think they did a really good job. And like I said, everybody went to see it, it seemed like.
Yeah, and that director also did that second Blade Runner.
Blade Runner 2049. Yeah, I loved that. That was really good.
He owes us another Blade Runner movie, too.
That's right. They were going to do another one, weren't they?
Yeah, because that story wasn't finished. The replicants and the what do you call them? Replicants and androids were out there. You know?
Yeah.
Because you have Wayland company that can make androids, and then you have Tyrell that was making replicants, and then you have the new company. What was it? That they have the new replicants. Fuck. No, they made replicants, and then they made the new company's making replicants and then holograms. Remember the hologram chick? What was the name of that company? The dude that was blind that had the damn.
I can't remember.
You remember the company?
Okay. Yeah, Ben says, are we going to make your art house weird movie, or are we going to make a movie with Danny DeVito in a bear costume? Yeah, you know what the answer to that question is always going to be. And something that Jodorowsky brought up in here, which maybe is a good way. I mean, you can't do it now, obviously, because, you know, now the other Dune movies have come out. But he wanted to see this done as an animated film, like his version, which that might work. You could do that like as an animated. I think that might be better, but I kind of feel like, well, he did, he used a lot of the ideas for this, like him and another guy like collaborated on like a series of graphic novels, like comics, you know what I mean? Where it's not Dune, but it's kind of based on it, and they used a lot of ideas from this. And that works out a lot better because he's like, you know, he's not obviously not restricted by having to spend millions and millions of dollars and doing all the special effects and stuff. Somebody said earlier that it's like, you know, if 2001: A Space Odyssey was made, you know, in 1969 or whatever, then this could have been made in the 70s. And I don't know if you were here when I mentioned, but Jodorowsky did approach the guy who did the effects for 2001 to do the effects on this because he was like the best in the biz. But when he met him, they didn't really vibe because he thought he was too technical, and he wanted somebody that was more imaginative or like somebody more out there. So like I said, that's why he went after Dan O'Bannon, who ended up working on it.
I think that other company I was talking about in Dune was called Wallace, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I told you.
Yeah.
No, it's been a while since we've seen that movie, so I don't really remember. I don't really remember. Yeah, Phantom says Barbarella is a tentpole making film. I see what you did there. That's very funny. Yeah, in your pants, you know. Yeah. You get it?
That was an awful mild movie. I don't know why it got that. It got that reputation
for the time. Yeah, it's not. It's slightly smutty, but it's not
barely
really
any nudity in it.
It's really not that smutty.
Right.
I mean, I guess comparatively.
Because that's nothing compared to damn Flesh Gordon. That was
that was a straight up porn though.
I think it was soft core though. I don't think it actually.
I thought it was hardcore porn, but I don't know. I don't remember much about it.
I think it just had a bunch of nudity in it.
Yeah, okay. I don't remember ever seeing it, to be honest with you.
I remember seeing it as a kid.
But even like a lot of those 70s porn movies, like Behind the Green Door and stuff like that, I don't really remember them being that. I mean, they're explicit. It's porn, but they're not that explicit.
Not like it we'd see today.
That's what I mean. It's just kind of like now everybody's so like desensitized to it, I guess, because you just go online and you can see anything the fuck you want.
The guys that make it realize that this isn't really art. This is just getting somebody off. So we'll just get rid of everything. Just do the scene. There's no story. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of adorable though in the 70s. They're like, we're gonna make it like an actual movie.
It's gonna be a
movie.
We're
gonna shoot it on film, and it's like we're gonna have a whole story behind it. And then it was like, then they realized, nobody cares about that.
They don't care about that.
They just want to see the fucking.
Yeah, the VHS came in and it was nothing just scene after scene after scene.
Yeah, just like compilations of scenes.
Yeah.
It's like we don't have time for this. Yeah. We don't care about these people. Nope. They can't act anyway. So yeah, most of them couldn't. I mean,
most of them couldn't.
Some of them could probably, but
that's not what they were there for.
Yeah, exactly.
It was TNA.
It was a whole different,
Now, girls out in L.A., that was L.A. time. They just jump in there to get their $700, do their scene, and go home.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all.
But yeah. All right, so you ready to wrap it up?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna go get a bagel, actually. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If, like I said, if you have, I'm pretty sure it was on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for nothing. Like I said, you don't even really have to know anything about Dune, really, because they kind of explain the story and everything. But if you're interested at all in film film history, or surrealism or anything like that, it's just a fun, really interesting documentary. So.
I don't know why we're coughing.
I don't know. I just started, I kind of something went down the wrong pipe. Wednesday night show is actually going to be about McCamey Manor, the most extreme haunted house attraction in the United States, evidently. So we're going to be talking about that and about all the controversy that stirred up when it first was opened. So yeah, that should be a good show. Somebody requested that a long time ago, and then it finally won in the polls by a large margin. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about on Wednesday night, so that should probably be really fun. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys then. Have a good rest of your evening, you guys, and we'll see you again on Wednesday night. Good night.